Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the trade or session recap for the London session for Monday, the 21st of March, 2022 on Euro Dollar. So, quick reminder, monthly time frame, right? We're coming off this potential demand chain with this extreme monthly demand zone. So, at a bare minimum, I am expecting a bit of a reaction, which is kind of explaining why we're starting to see that sort of complex pullback on the lower time frames, right? Really just giving some more positive confluence to looking for those bullish plays. Whoops, definitely don't do that. Cool, yeah. So coming off into the extreme weekly demand as well, right? We saw a nice bullish close to end last week, giving us that sort of morning star formation, right? So probably expecting we're going to see a bit of a decent pullback, potentially up into this extreme weekly supply zone, which swept liquidity. So there's decent confluence to look for longs at least up into this level before then potentially continuing the bearish trend, with the small possibility that because we're coming off that extreme monthly demand, potentially we may start to play towards the top of that monthly range, okay? But keep it very simple. I just really like that we're coming off this level. There's going to be a decent amount of bullish pressure, so therefore looking for those counter 4-hour and M15 trend longs, they have a lot more weight behind them, right? Trying to potentially get that bullish higher time frame pullback. Likewise, coming off the extreme daily demand within that weekly and monthly demand, and that's why we're starting to see sort of this more complex pullback, right? And we may get a bit more of a choppier move up and towards the premium daily and weekly supply. I did have a daily zone drawn on, but again, TradingView is still being super glitchy for me, which is a little bit frustrating. So essentially what I was looking at before is kind of, we can clearly see, right, that some supply came into the market here and pushed down, but in terms of drawing it on the daily chart, it's not really that clear. I mean, you could draw it on this side bar, but the next candle failed to close below it, so for me that's not really valid. So you can draw it on this whole candle here, right? That would be valid as well, or take the buy to sell wicks here, something like that, right? So, and then we've had a bit of a tap into here, which we're seeing some sensitivity from, okay, after kind of sweeping this high here. So there's potential that we could start to sell off from here, but because we're coming off such a strong demand level, right, there is that potential that we could push higher. So at the moment, it's not super clear. I wouldn't say there's, I don't have super confidence that we're going to come up here. I'm also not that confident that we're going to sell off when we've had that pullback. So this is where I'm just being a little bit more nimble with sort of my outlook and trades, and kind of just trying to wait for price to come into those clean high time frame POIs, and then just being reasonably nimble with my management. Because 4-hour chart for me is bearish. We're trading between this swing range here. You can kind of see these also larger swings in price, and it did kind of break up above this high. So that, sort of one, I guess, way of viewing it in the back of my mind is potentially we could get this move down into this demand chain, right, and then continue that deeper daily pullback, right, up into these sort of more premium levels of supply, or even here. So that's kind of my main trade idea for coming into Monday, was potentially after having that bearish 4-hour chock, right, we would just come down to this demand zone and then potentially look for longs to then target this high and potentially higher, then look for shorts within here, target down into here with the potential that we may switch bearish or we may continue up, right? Kind of just following these sort of larger swings in price, just because it's not super clear otherwise. So that's what I was kind of looking at. I thought we might sell off a little bit more before getting that move here, but then if we jump down to the 15-minute, right, why does it keep deleting my analysis? This is so frustrating. I don't know if anyone else is having these issues, but yeah. Okay, let's just quickly draw this on, and then I can put my pretty little blue circle down here on the M15 swing low. So for me, the M15 trend is bearish between this low here and this high here. Some of you obviously aren't using the larger pip rules, and that's absolutely fine. So then you would have the M15 switching bullish here. So even for me, even though I have the M15 bearish, when I see something like this, right, a strong, almost V-shaped reaction away, big momentum, broken, decent parts of structure, that it's a reasonably bullish sign. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm viewing the M15 as bullish, right, because the trend is bearish, but it's just showing you that there's a lot of momentum coming in. Then we have a super corrective pullback throughout Asia, coming into the weekly open, right, into Monday, coming into the European Open, where we know volumes are going to be kicking in, right? It's very simple: impulse, corrective pullback, building all of that liquidity to target, expecting that next impulsive leg to the upside to potentially pull back up into the premium of the M15 swing range, right? with the other potential that obviously we could be having that deeper daily pullback and we could switch bullish. So as we were coming into these demand levels, I was also looking at the extreme down here. Even though it is counter trend and you are essentially trading from a weak leg, because of the overall, you have to read kind of like the characteristics of the delivery of price, of how it's happened, right? Nice big aggressive move in and out, super corrective pullback. We then built some zoom in, some pretty clean equal lows right into this POI. We then swept those lows and then had a nice bullish movement coming into the Frankfurt Open. Now the only thing I didn't like about this was that the M15 kind of failed to close above here, and it was kind of that wick rejection. And then I was a little bit hesitant because I was like, oh, we're rejecting supply now, and that for me was quite off-putting negative confluence. But with just the whole, you're never going to have that perfect trade, right? And this is where you then have to judge it yourself as a trader, whether it meets enough of the minimum criteria in your plan and whether or not you're happy to accept the risk to play that counter trend movement. It's going to be down to you. For me, I was happy with it when combining with how it looked on the M1, with the sweep, with the potential to have that decent RR potential up into premium supply. But the main thing was just this whole behavior of price, right? Big impulsive movement, nice corrective pullback, sweep into the POI, and essentially you have your bullish iChock, whatever you want to call it. The true chock levels at that point were between this low here and this high here. Why is that? Well, we have a down movement, an up movement, and then all of those candles break the prior candle's low. So when price came up and broke that high, that was the bullish change of character, and then the internal price action stayed bullish ever since. So that was the internal range. So yes, this is not a true chock, but you're just using that as a, hopefully you guys can read between the lines here, right? You're using that just as a bit of a bullish signal, right? We've had that, essentially that pullback. Now we've broken that pullback. Okay, that's a little sign now that potentially, structure shifting in our favor to then look for that bullish movement there. Okay. Cool. So yes, that gave us some M15 demand to then look for longs within. Then we broke up to the upside, right? Have another IBOS there, and then as price was pulling back, I was looking for price to come into here to then look for another long, which it didn't quite pull back to, and it continued that bullish movement with another IBOS. So at this point, you kind of got two POIs on the M15 here and here. I was a little bit hesitant that this was going to be inducement for here, so this was kind of my main focus. So when price came in, basically I was waiting for a M1 chock within here to then look for the confirmation entry, which it gave, but I didn't get tagged in. So there was a nice risk entry within here. I know some people caught, absolutely valid. I was waiting for a confirmation entry within here on the M1 just in case it came down lower first, but I didn't get tagged in on the CE or the DCE. And then by the time we've come up to this extreme end of the London session, I'm no longer interested. But if you want to keep trading throughout this, potentially you could look at this, but it's a lot lower probability at this stage. But really what I'm trading in the counter trend is the initial sweep into the POI, and I'm just trying to get that, that European volume kicking in. Now we've kind of failed to break up above the high. Potentially we're just building some nice equals, right? We might come into here and push up higher, but I'm happy to leave it now. I've made my money. I'm more than happy to start the week that way. Like, I don't need to force it on kind of these trades now. I'm happy to wait for the more high probability stuff if we come up here, or potentially push into here during New York. So that's essentially how I read the M15 for the London session today. Let's quickly look at the M1. So initially coming to London, I wasn't really that keen on anything. I didn't really like the look of it, to be honest with you. If we look at the 4-hour chart again, because I think it's kind of important to talk about it. Like, mechanically, what's going on? Well, it's bearish, right? We are trading between this swing high and this swing low. We've come up to pretty much mitigate whatever supply is left within that extreme wick. We then have a decent amount of momentum to the downside, giving us that bearish 4-hour change of character. So, the 4-hour is bearish, the internal structure is now aligned bearish, so potentially expecting at least that movement into demand or potentially lower. The M15 was also bearish, but like I said, right, because of the way in which it was pulling back with that big V-shaped movement and super corrective pullback, that's what I'm happy to just try and play, that bullish momentum as it's coming into London. So when I saw essentially this reaction from one of my refined M1 POIs, right, if you go look left, you can then refine a large zone into clean M1 zone, so you can expect when price mitigates one of those, it's going to give you a higher probability entry, right? Nice inducement below the zone there. Then scroll back, and this is key, right? Big momentum coming in, right, after a nice liquidation there on the M1. Now, obviously multiple M1 POIs, where are you going to trade from? Am I going to trade from up here? Hopefully I don't have to explain why I wouldn't be interested in looking for a long from here, right? We've got all of this below, we've got this, didn't flip anything, price had just broken up above this, no sweep, no inducement, right? So that's likely going to become inducement before below. We have this then as well, no sweep, right? this is the one I'm going to be interested in for a risk entry. I'm happy to play a confirmation entry from here if we get it, right? Clearly don't come in, react, push down, build even more nice equals, right? Even better inducement. This is just, for me, picture perfect risk entry territory, even though it's counter trend. That's arguably a sweep as well, the way I view it. And then, I was more than happy to set my risk entry. I did actually have my entry order here. I don't know how I got such big positive slippage, but I'm not going to complain. It obviously benefits and suits me, so that's fine. And then a nice reaction away. Now, when we got this continuation here, that is definitely a valid continuation. I wasn't personally looking at it just because I was happy to kind of just have this sort of one initial trade on at that point, with it being counter trend and that, so I wouldn't have been tagged in most likely anyway on that, but it did sweep liquidity underneath this inside bar. So that for me would meet my plan. Then we had another clear M15 IBOS. Now at this point, this is when we were pulling back, and I was just waiting for price to either come into this POI here or the extreme POI within here, and then look for a confirmation entry, right? This would have been a valid risk entry, or you can play a CE off that, or maybe you want to actually set a limit on that because it's part of this demand chain. That's up to you, but I would have been looking for a CE from this level. Personally, didn't quite pull back to it, kind of chopped around, and then I didn't like the way it kind of formed these lows. Kind of looked like to me that was going to be used for inducement for this M15 POI below, which is the reason why I didn't want to set a risk entry here, okay? Because obviously we did then have another M15 internal breaker structure here, giving you another sort of M15 POI. So then, yes, this is a valid M1 risk entry to set a level. It did obviously sweep liquidity below these lows. But for me personally, like I said, I kind of viewed that. I wasn't too sure. So I was happy to kind of stick to this unmitigated extreme M15 POI. But if it gave me a CE from this level and it holds, then I'm happy to get involved. So then we had just textbook, very simple chop from that level, set my entry order, but missed it by about half a pip, or if that, I can't remember exactly how much, but I had roughly around there. So it was missed by about half a pip. And then it continued up. So basically viewed that as mitigated right at the distals, and then just moved this up to this level here. And then obviously didn't get tagged. And then as it started to move away, just cancelled my order once we then broke those highs. And then this is when we got up to the top of that M15 range, and no longer interested. Right, struggling to break the highs, come towards the end of the session, becomes a lot lower probability at that point. So pretty simple price action on the M1, in my opinion. This isn't the highest probability M1 risk entry in the world. Like I said, I've explained the reasons it's counter trend. I didn't necessarily like that M15 fell to close above, and then I wasn't sure if this wick was rejecting this as supply and we were going to have another drive lower into the M1 extreme within here. But because of the overall momentum and how clean this M1 price action looked overall, with inducement, liquidation, everything, I was happy to take that, with that decent risk reward. Trying to target at least the break of these highs, or if not up into that supply. Then obviously you have that continuation, which you arguably is a lot more high probability at that point then, because you're kind of trading in line with the momentum. But I was just a little bit hesitant with these lows potentially being inducement for this much cleaner sort of M15 POI. So risk entry was valid, but I wanted to play for the CE. It was just unfortunate not to get tagged in on that one. But it is what it is. So pretty nice clean price action overall. 4 hour chart's a little bit kind of hard to read and what it wants to do next. My best guess is that we're probably going to come into this demand chain, and then I'll be looking for longs to potentially target this, right, to then try and get that deeper high time frame pullback, at least potentially up into this level, or maybe we are now ready, right, to continue and target that week low. I don't know. I'm going to be pretty nimble with my management on trades, really, kind of just trying to use the M15 as my main guide. We have had that bearish chalk, so potentially it's not the cleanest. We can view that as that sort of 4 hour supply. So maybe we might get a move into here during New York, or potentially tomorrow, and then we can look for that move. It's not super clean to me, but because the main thing I have personally in the back of my mind is because we're coming off that monthly, weekly and daily level, I really wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a bit more of a move like that. But I'm not really too worried about trying to have the perfect call on what that move is going to be, because I'm just waiting for price to come into those clear M15 POIs, look for my M1 entry model, and then try and target somewhere between 5 and 10 RI, and that's when I'm always going to take off the majority of my volume, get in and out, play the reactions from those POIs, and that's the realm in which I operate within, and which I find to be sort of the way that works best for my edge and my psychology. So if you guys want to replicate that, then that's cool. That would be my advice, rather than always trying to hit those 20-30 hour trades, because I think on average it's just going to end up with a bit more frustration. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. There's a few of you posting some really nice clean markups and catching some nice trades, which is good to see. If you are obviously being patient and waiting for the Pro M15 trend stuff, that's fine. Be patient, trust the process, stick to it. Make sure you do your markups from last week, right? Go and dig in on these Pro M15 trades within here, right? There's plenty of stuff to go in there and find. So yeah, I'll leave that there and I'll see you. Well, actually, let's do a super quick kind of forecast for New York. Thing is, I don't really like doing this because even within the next hour or so, a lot could change. But if it's stuck like this, let's say this was New York Open, yeah, I'd be looking for longs within here. Only downside to this is this low could be viewed as weak, right? Because it's attempted and failed to break that high. However, on the balance of things, right, if we came into this M15 POI and it gave our nice typical M1 entry model, I'd be more than happy enough to look for an entry within here, right? We swept liquidity, but yeah, it's not great that it's kind of tried to take out the high, and obviously it is counter trend, but it does look like we're leaving those nice equal highs to target. So I'd personally be happy to accept the risk within here, or potentially we might be coming down. But if we came down here with a lot of momentum at that point, right, this is a weak low, so I'd probably most likely want to see at least an M15 chalk at that point if I was going to trade from this week low, right? And then yeah, focusing on here for those pro M15 4-hour bearish trend shorts if we do get up there. Obviously, bear in mind as well. Actually, no. Okay, ignore me on that one. Yeah, I'll post the markup before New York anyway. We can get a bit more of a clean look before that volume starts to kick in. All right, guys, have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.